In our unmentionable segment of this broadcast, we bring you the stories the liberal media won't be telling you about. The latest example, a gruesome video game. It allows players to indiscriminately slaughter Tea Party-backed politicians, Fox News personalities. They use everything in this game, from a crowbar to a machine gun, to dispatch Tea Party zombies. Tea Party Zombies Must Die was created by a New York-based game developer who launched a similar game back in 2004 targeting officials in the Bush administration. Conservatives tonight are, well, upset, saying the news media would be in an uproar if violence had been incited against liberals in this video game. They're right. They'll be ignored. Joining me now, three of my favorite American voices. Joe Wurzelbacher, author of the book Joe the Plumber, Fighting for the American Dream. Joe, great to have you with us. Radio talk show host Bev Smith, WPHT radio talk show host Dom Giordano. Thank you all for being here. Dom, let's start with you. The Tea Party zombies must die, and almost not a flutter, not even a flutter from the national liberal media. What do you make of it?
Yeah, Lou, I laugh it off. I understand if it's a bloviator like me, and I don't know about you, and they're in there, but Lou, Brit
Wait a minute.
Did
you mention me in this bloviator class?
I thought you would be. I thought you'd be in it, but how can anybody want to take out Brit Hume?
Some folks right now are thinking you just elevated me, but that's all right.
I have elevated you to that class, but Brit Hume is in there, and the blonde anchor women on Fox News are in there, Lou. That just shows you how crazy this is, but the bottom line is this. It's the whole civility piece that we've seen over the weekend with Jimmy Hoffa and the others. If the shoe were on the other foot, there would be massive wall-to-wall coverage.
Yeah. What do you think, Joe?
Actually, I just think it's sad, Lou. I mean, they're putting things in there to try to infer racial overtones with the Tea Party and the rhetoric. It's gotten ridiculous. It's sad, and the American people just can't stand for this anymore. Let's talk about the real issues and get something done instead of this. Constantly stirring the pot is all that's doing.
Bev Smith, we just heard Harvey Golub, one of the most distinguished executives in American business, say basically of all of the Republican candidates that they're Mickey Mouse. What do you make of the prospects for this president to do something pivotal tomorrow in his address on job creation?
Well, I'm a little disappointed. As the liberal, I wanted you to ask me a question about that game.
Okay, well, let's start with the game. I'm a flexible kind of fella.
I wanted in on this. I thought you were just going to have the guy. Well, what I'm very concerned about is that we're talking about the media, and on both sides, liberal and conservative, I don't think all of the news is reported. And I don't think the voice of America, which you're giving us tonight, gets reported. But let's talk about who will be buying that game. That game is aimed at children. And we just had a young child killed because of their gender persuasion. And so I think we ought to be talking about, instead of whether the press will carry it or not, since you're talking about it, the violence that is going on in this country and how the violence is being played out in video games across the board. I think we need to be looking at our love of killing in this country. I don't know about you, but look at every movie that comes on. There's violence in it. And I'm more concerned about children seeing this game, and I think something ought to be done. And I'm the liberal on this team.
Well, see, I'm with you, but about something ought to be done about the violence in this society. But I look at violence in a somewhat different way than you are. I think about the violence that's being done to millions of young people. And by the way, many of them live in inner cities, ensconced in a place that should be safe, that turns out to be as violent and anything but insular, and that is whether it be in Roxbury, whether it be, you name the section of the inner city in this country. We're watching the war on drugs not even being fought. We've accepted as collateral damage 50% of our black students, 50% of our Hispanic students who drop out of high school. We are accepting as collateral damage those who are addicted to drugs, to alcohol, to prescription drugs. And we're worrying about 47, 58, 64 people getting shot at in New York City over a weekend. That's dramatic, but the fact is we are losing tens of thousands of young people's lives to drugs that we won't interdict. We are losing tens of thousands of young lives because we will not demand that they go to school. We will not demand that they be disciplined in their classrooms. We are a nation creating a generation of further fools. Ours is a generation of fools, Bev, but the next generation will be even more foolish because we are not educating them.
Well,
Lou,
first
if I
of all,
can
he said,
interject,
let me just respond.
Get in there.
For a moment. Just to respond for a moment, because you did say Bev, just to respond for a moment. I think we need to take color out
You would
of
have
this
responded
issue.
even if I hadn't said Bev. Don't be doing
You
that.
know me well. You know me well. But I think we need to take color out of this issue because this is an American problem.
Hey,
and there's too much
look,
polarization.
I'm going to put color into it because it's 50% of blacks, Bev. It's
Then you need
50%
to
of
talk to me.
Hispanics. It is.
Then,
and
okay,
by the way,
then you need to talk to me.
Don't run from race here. Don't run from
I'm not
race.
going to run from.
Don't run from the
Lou,
facts. The facts
you know
are
me
that,
far
no,
too well
Bev,
to know that
no,
I'm not
you
going
know
to run
me
from
too
race.
well to know I'm not going to be backing up here.
Okay,
The
but
fact of the
if
matter
you're-
is,
if
this
you're
is
gonna
an
talk
issue that
about
is going.
race,
Bev,
If
you
if
don't
you're
get
going to talk about race,
on this show.
you have to
don't
talk
get
about
a
the
monopoly
color of
on
the people
race.
bringing the guns into the.
Bev,
If you're going to talk, you got to
Bev,
talk about it across the
if you
board.
keep
You're going to talk about
talking-
white people
okay.
who manufacture guns.
Bev,
White
if
people
you keep
bringing
talking,
in black
we're
people
not
and
going to have
Hispanics
time
don't
to
have
have a
that.
discussion. And we got two other folks
Well,
here
hold
who've
on,
got
hold on.
views too. Joe Wurzelbacher first.
Well, Lou, what it comes down to is basic principles of right and wrong and respect and accountability. That's how we solve the problem across the board. Black, white, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. We don't teach that. We don't instill it in
That's
our
right.
children, and that's why we're having the violence. I mean, I played Cowboys and Indians. I shot make-believe whatever when I was growing up, but there was still a matter of respect that was instilled into me by my elders, and that's something that I carry on now. And that's something that's lacking, unfortunately, in the school systems, the parents these days. It has nothing to do with
Lou,
color across the board, but it does have to do with respect.
Dom
and
Giordano.
back to the basics.
Yeah, Lou, what I would say is the point you were making is this. We've come to accept various things, and I think that's a point I would make with Bev. I'm just coming from a situation today in Philadelphia where there was a shooting,
Right.
and it's accepted that in that neighborhood this type of thing is going to happen.
It just
And there are
happened, yeah.
vast neighborhoods across America where it's acceptable.
Yeah, and by the way, Bev, let's go back to race here. When I talk about the statistics, the fact of the matter is, and if you tell me these statistics and if you demonstrate they're wrong, then we can take race out of it. But when half of Hispanic kids are dropping out of high school, half of blacks are dropping out of high school, when we are watching what is happening in our society because of drugs, because of a failure to have discipline in our schools and expectations of our children, then I say that we have to start paying attention to the consequences of the policies and the attitudes and the values that we are imparting to an entire generation. Your
Okay,
turn, Bev. You get
that's
the
a
last
broad
word.
That's a broad statement. When you're talking
Yeah,
about
it is.
statistics, yeah, it's a broad statement. When you're talking about statistics about blacks dropping out and Hispanics, you're right. But what you need to add to that are the stats that came out last month about white kids dropping out. We need to look at the dropout problem, and we need to look at schools, as Steve Perry talks about all the time. We need to look at the school system, and we need to look at parenting. And if we're going to start, if you're going to talk about guns, if you're going to talk about violence, you've got to look at the
Bev,
media.
you can't
You've
run
got
from
to
the
look at-
consequences. You can't run from the reality. The reality
I'm
is
not
that we're
running.
in
I
this.
don't
No,
bring the
Bev,
guns
we're
into
in
my
this
community.
together. We're in this together. And for
Well,
you
then,
to
let's
deny
mention
the consequences of choices that are being made
Now,
here.
did you hear me
is
deny that?
ridiculous.
I did not deny that. I want to broaden the conversation.
You
'cause
said it
hit
was a
those
broad
buzz
statement
buttons,
I made
and those
earlier. Now
buzz-
you want to broaden it? Come on, Bev. Come
you
on
made
back.
a broad
We'll continue
statement.
the
I want you to
conversation.
be inclusive. I
Thank
want you to be
Bev,
inclusive.
I appreciate
Lou.
what you want, and I want you to come back and we'll continue the conversation.
And I
we're going
wanna
to take it
come
one
back.
sentence at a time. Every other sentence. Yours, then mine. Yours,
You
then
do it
We're
now.
coming right back. Joe
You do it now.
Wurzelbacher, thanks for being with us. Bev Smith, Dom Giordano.